I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
Hello, Bonnie.
Okay, I want you to, we got the camera on your diploma, and I want you to point those things out to us.
Well, diploma is up above there, and that's dated March 11th, 1925.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, now what's that little chain that's hanging? Explain that little chain to me.
That is a 50-year service award that the Palmer College of Chiropractic gives out to their students who are still alive and in practice after 50 years of chiropractic service.
How did they get it to you? Was it at a convention or something?
Nimmo brought it back to me from Palmer College.
Oh, that's great. Okay, then what's this next one?
This is the Texas Board of Chiropractic Examiners, which says that I passed their examination, and this is the Texas Chiropractic Association, Incorporated, of which I'm a life member. Well, we have been working on a film today that we call Section 5 of our tape that we're making for a record of my findings, and that is also going to demonstrate my technique of taking care of these people in accordance with the premise that I have established. Rather than adjusting the vertebra, I adjust the head on the vertebra instead of trying to adjust the head, trying to adjust the vertebra under the head to fit the head properly. I stabilize the vertebra and just put the head on the vertebra where it belongs.
Mm-hmm.
It works better.
Yeah. And you've got a lot of success, and so you're going to show?
Oh my, yes. My percentage of results is so much better that it makes the old way it look like a kerosene lamp beside your best lamps today. I've got a patient tomorrow that's I'm having over here specifically for a subject for the TV camera. He's a bad case of torticollis that another doctor has scrounged out for me to use on my tape.
Oh, is he coming over tomorrow?
Tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I never met this man before. I have agreed to examine him, pay for his x-rays, if he will be a subject on tape, and we're going to give him about a $2,000 to $500 service for being a subject on the tape, if he is a type of case that will be suitable for what I want to teach.
Yeah. Well, when did you find out about him?
Well, I've been in touch with this other doctor for about 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked him to keep a patient in mind that if he could find one that was dramatic in a bad posture that we could help, that I would take care of him without charge.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he had a case that he'd been working on for a year of a crooked neck. He hasn't helped him any, and he's getting worse all the time.
Okay.
And it looks to me like we've got a case here that will respond very good for a clinical case. See?
Well, I'll tell you. Now, you know this letter of Kim's, you know, you wanted to include this in your tape, which we're doing. You made a remarkable difference in her life, Daddy, and she was so grateful that she wanted a picture with you, and she got
Well,
it.
her life was miserable the way it was. Now she's happy.
Yeah,
She just feels good.
yeah. And in that letter, we tell all the stuff that was wrong with her, and there was a bunch, wasn't there?
Yes. Yes, she was a sick little girl.
Section 1 and Section 5 done, don't you? You feel like taped.
Yes. Well, I got 2, 3, and 4 to do yet.
Yeah.
I've got the introduction, I've got Section 1,
That's the introduction.
and I've got to do 2, 3, and 4 yet.
And 2 is the, well, listing and detecting is what you call it, right?
Listed and detecting. In other words, we've got to teach the doctor how to examine so he'll know where, if it's there or not,
Yeah.
and if it is there, have it analyzed so he knows what to do about it.
Uh-huh.
It's got to be listed in such a way that he can formulate a tailor-made adjustment to correct that. And that is more or less of a routine that if he follows like I am trying to teach it, it will help him in the actual doing of the adjustment. And it'll teach him how to keep records so that he'll know from time to time if what he's done, if he's modified it any, or if it needs to be modified, when he's done it, what angles he used, and then by x-raying again at a later date, he can check back and see what postural changes he's made in the patient, and how much of this nerve signal interference he has been able to remove.
Right, right. Well, it's also worthwhile, and I told you the other day, I said, Daddy, you've got an interesting kind of life. I know it's tiring. I know you get tired. And I wish you could sleep better at night, but I think it's concern over everything.
Well, the general public doesn't seem to understand the importance of this nerve signal interference at the cranial vertebral junction.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the head joins the spine. There are over 100 million nerve signals going through there every second of our lives
Mm-hmm.
to control our body chemistry and to maintain the functions that we need in order to maintain and keep the body in a good functional state. And then on top of those 100 million per second, there's a whole lot of more millions necessary to do what we do with working and playing.
Mm-hmm.
So that junction between the head and the spine is where all these nerve signals come into the brain from the body, and from when they get out of the brain to the body through that same junction.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the most vital areas of the body.
Yeah, and it can play havoc with anything, can't it?
Now, when bones don't stay in their proper position so that you get the movement in the head that you're supposed to have, then it creates an irritation on those nerves between this cranium and the spine, this junction, and that makes the nerve send signals because of that irritation, which the brain interprets as coming from the body, and the brain responds to those signals, and what the response is inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason why we have muscles that are so tight that this whole intense, because the brain thinks that for the message you got, you need more tone.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's an error of the brain, because the brain didn't get proper information because of the interference at that spot. So if I'm able to take the interference off from there and the information from the muscles and the other parts of the body gets through there like it's supposed to, then the brain will know what to decide and where to send it so that you'll have an appropriate response.
Yeah.
And if you have the tissues of the body that are healthy, or they can function well, and the nervous signals are correctly sent, well, it's got to function right. See?
Yeah.
And that's what health is all about.
Yeah.
Now, people, they know from what the Attorney General has said about cigarette smoking being a hazard to the health. It is a hazard to the health. But how many have realized that when they have a nerve signal interference in that junction between the head and the spine, that could cause more havoc than smoking cigarettes?
Nobody thinks of it, Daddy.
No. And who's talking about it?
Nobody, Daddy.
Well, I am. I'm talking about it.
Nobody
But,
else, though.
Your medical doctors don't say anything about it.
I was going to say, they're not going to say
The
that.
osteopaths don't say anything about it. And most of the chiropractors, they're looking at the spaces along the spine, a little lower down the spine, that's tender and so forth, and they're hacking away at that without paying much attention to this important area, the junction between the skull and the vertebral column.
Right.
And that's the junction that I have named the CVJ.
What's that?
That's cranium vertebral junction.
Okay, I don't think I knew
The
that.
CVJ is where you get most of the nerve signal interference. And when that happens, you better know what you're doing to take it off from there. And to keep it off from there.
And that's what your whole...
And that's what my whole thing is about.
Now, there's several other things I want to mention. Now, I don't want to leave anything out. One of the things I wanted to mention, and if I could get Joel to record on mine, I don't know if he'll do this, have time to do this or not. But that was when you went to, you took this, your clart that you made, clart, is that how you say it, clart?
Clart.
Clart, okay, clart. You took the clart and you had an actual skeleton that you put in there.
Yes.
Now, where was that?
At Weatherford, Oklahoma. Weatherford, Texas.
Okay, that was...
25 miles north of here.
It was how many?
25 miles north
Oh,
of here.
25 miles north. Okay. Okay, now that was at a university, right?
That is a part of the Texas Educational Institution, a college.
Okay.
That's Weatherford, Texas College. Weatherford, Texas College.
Now, how did you get the invitation to do that?
Well, Joel was going to school up there, and he was in the biology class, and he mentioned some of this, what I was doing, to his biology instructor, and said it would sure be nice if he could demonstrate that on the skeleton. He said, well, just have at it. Have your grandpa come on up here with his camera and all, and we'll just turn things over to him, and he can do as he pleases in
That's
here.
just super.
So we did that.
Okay, that's one thing I wanted to mention. Another thing I want to mention is on March the 9th and 10th is when you have the a chiropractic convention in Houston.
This is February the 22nd.
Yeah.
And March 9th and 10th is the midwinter Texas Chiropractic Convention in Lubbock, Texas.
Uh-huh.
And they have a lot of doctors there from West Texas and New Mexico and Arizona that come into this convention so that they can get the credits necessary for their license renewal for 1986.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to show this passive motion device that I have made for helping to restore the normal structures of a joint. I want to show that and demonstrate it at a booth in Lubbock, Texas. And I also want to show some of this tape that we're making in Lubbock, Texas.
Uh-huh. I sure hope
And
we have...
we're in a position where we can take orders for the clart, or we can take orders for the tape.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that the chiropractors who have a desire for excellence of performance will and should be interested in, because of the increased results that they're able to get over and above what they're using today.
Mm-hmm.
Because it should work just as well for them as it does work for me.
Well, that's great. Now that's another opportunity. And then, just the other day, you found out another opportunity that's coming up next Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Now, would you tell me about that on here?
Well, Joel, of course, is my grandson, as you know.
Yep.
And
My nephew.
he's going to, he plans on entering chiropractic college this fall. And at the present time, he's going to Weatherford, Texas College, getting his credits so that he will be qualified to enter school. Well, he's been so impressed with some of the work that we're doing, and he's seen from what I've said that I don't agree with our textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
So one of his buddies that he's also going to be a doctor, and he had been going to Fort Worth to the osteopathic college.
Mm-hmm.
And talking to the registrar and the professors at the osteopathic college about what do they teach.
Mm-hmm.
And the question came up is, what is your concept of how this joint between the head and the spine work? And he said, if they get their books down and they show us those things. And Joel said, well, that isn't exactly the way it works. It works in a different way. There are several joints in there instead of this one. Well, he convinced him that he had something that was worth looking into. So the doctor who is head of the dissection in the osteopathic college at Fort Worth has set up an appointment next Wednesday at 2 o'clock for he and I to go in there, and we will actually do a dissection of this junction between the cranium and the spine.
And they call this a cadaver.
On a cadaver.
And if this is a human body that is donated to science.
This is a human body. I don't know how old it is.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it's been dead. But that'll be a body that's been shipped into to them for dissection.
Uh-huh.
And for the first time, this osteopath is going to go into that area and find out exactly how the joints do work.
Yes. Now, will Joel be in on that?
Oh yes.
Oh, great.
Oh yes.
The three of you together.
Oh yes. And this doctor, PhD in his specialty, he may go down as the first man to produce the evidence supporting this postulation that I have presented.
Well, he can't do it. You mean he would go down as the guy that did it?
He would go down as the guy that did it, and of course we'd be right there, and we'd be on record as the ones that was instrumental in having him do this particular type of dissection to establish the true mechanics of the joints between the skull and the spinal column.
Well, I was going to say,
Now,
you knew it was your idea and not his.
There are 5 diarthrodial joints in this area, and their textbooks have only listed 3. And we're going to show them where these 5 are and how important it is that all of them work like they should work, so that we will have room for the spinal cord with carrying all these nerve signals to go through there regardless of the position of our neck. And when something in our neck doesn't work right and some of those movements are restricted because the joints don't fit right, then it produces more nerve signal trouble and creates these problems with people's health.
Yeah.
And that's something that they have been overlooking in the area that I think is so vitally important.
And it is. It is, and you're going to be showing, people are going to be finding it out, Daddy.
Well, for the past 25 years, I have been doing this to people, and these patients that I have got have been patients of other doctors for years, and what I do has accomplished their objective when what the money they spent with the other doctors didn't.
Now you've been doing this new neck technique, I call it new neck technique, but you've been doing this for 25 years?
Well,
15 years? 25 years?
I started this in 1958.
68,
And
78.
I quit adjusting those vertebrae in the spine like I was taught to do, and substituted my technique of trying to get the head back where it belongs on top of those vertebrae, rather than trying to get the vertebrae where they belong underneath the skull.
In 1958, huh?
In 58 I started that, and it was pretty crude.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept on working at it until I have refined it today, until I'm actually doing what I set out to do. I'm fixing it in one adjustment, and then if the patient will listen to my program of rehabilitation, they can keep it in place until those joint structures return to sufficient function to hold it there.
Well, that's just great, Daddy.
And as far as I know, there's nobody else in our profession that even professes to do any of that.
No, I don't think so.
If they can fix it, why they want to do it in 30, 40, 50, 100 treatments.
Yeah,
And that isn't the way to do it.
yeah,
You either fix it or you don't fix it.
right.
And you can't expect the joint to start healing until you have got the joint in position where those structures can heal, and the joint can work again as it was intended to work.
Well, Daddy, I just think it's great, and more power to you, and keep it up, and anything else I can do to help you, let me know. And
Now you take this tape you'll have in your home,
yeah,
and you'll have people visiting you
mm-hmm.
with severe headaches, or this, that, and the other is wrong with them, and they'll tell you, well, I went to Dr. So-and-so and they didn't help me any, or I'm just like I was. And none of them have done what I'm just telling you I'm doing.
That's right.
And if they were really interested in getting it corrected, they'd listen and listen carefully to what I say and have said to you in this tape.
That's right. Now, I have a neighbor you know about that could sure use your help, you know, Pauline.
Well, I've never examined her. From what you tell me, it looks favorable.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say what I could do for her until I'd examined her and saw what the condition was and whether or not there's a possibility that she would respond to that type of treatment. But
I think
I've had a lot of people that have similar symptoms to what she has that have got well almost like a miracle.
I am sure.
Now I want to remind you, remember she had that fall from the slipper slide?
Yeah,
You remember how it affected her?
yeah, yeah, headaches, awful bad headaches.
Remember how things went so wrong?
Yeah,
And then I fixed her and she's all right
yeah,
until she fell off her bicycle and broke her arm
yeah,
and re-hurt it again.
yeah,
And after I fixed it the second time, she got along fine.
yeah.
You see, I knew exactly what I was doing and I was able to fix it. She didn't have to have a big bunch of treatments.
No,
I just fixed it and she grew well.
that's right. But after that, then, just in this last year now, I haven't talked to her lately about it, but then she was starting to have these real bad headaches. Remember, Daddy? And she was having them.
Well, she herniated disc twice, insulting those ligaments that hold it together there. She's going to be more vulnerable to injury there than she was if she had never hurt it.
That's what she's told me. I know that.
And The only thing we can do about it is that if she does get it hurt again, the quicker she gets it back in position so that she can begin to eat it again, the better off she'll be. Now, I know that if she would get on this clerd after I fix it and do the routine that I recommend, that she could keep it in place until it healed up.
Yeah. Of course, now she's in Tonkawa, and we're, you know, our
Well,
instrument.
you can't both use the same unit
Yeah.
when you're that many miles apart.
That's right.
But I got more units.
Yeah, you do, Daddy. I know. Well, every now and then, I asked her not too long ago, I said, are you still having the bad headaches? And she said, no, she wasn't. And then sometimes she does have them, so she has them. And then she doesn't have them, you know. So, anyway, if it hadn't have been for you, Daddy, Julie yips a lot when you adjust her. You know, yips, you know. But if it hadn't been for you, Daddy, she would have been in bad
Well,
shape.
Judy appreciates what I've done for her.
Yes, she does, but
And,
she yips.
She yips, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I yip, don't I?
I didn't say it would be pleasant.
No.
It don't hurt bad enough so that you got to take an anesthetic.
No. That's right. You don't have to put us out for it.
So if a little hurt isn't worth saving a big hurt,
Well, it is.
there it
Hold
is.
the line. I want to check on how this tape is doing. Just a minute. See how far we're coming with it.
Well, now you fellows have got a pretty good tape about how I've done this on the tape that I made you before.
I know we do. I know.
So you shouldn't be any strangers to what I am trying to get across.
That's right. And we're not. No, Daddy, and I understand it more. You know that other tape that you had that you showed the skull when we were here, August, and you showed the skull? Then when I got home, I played it back. And when I would just follow you with my mind so carefully, you know, and then when I needed to know something and I couldn't concentrate or I couldn't comprehend it, I would just back it up. And I learned an awful lot from it, and I
You
appreciate
learned a
it.
lot from repetition.
Yes, I did. Repetition, I have to have it. Some people
So
maybe
you'll do the same thing with what
this
we're doing
one,
here.
right here, right, yes. And I'll go home and I'll look this over, and some of the stuff that seems so far over my head and will always be over my head, at least you say it to me where I can understand it.
Well, you don't have a technical knowledge of what we're talking about, and you're not familiar with the terminology that we use.
That's right.
And it's pretty hard to put this mental thought in layman's language.
But you do well, because I can see this fascination of it. You know, when I got through listening to that tape with a thought to learn.
Now, I want to say a phrase to you where you can listen to this time and time again and see if it will make any sense to you.
Okay.
You know that the prefix hypo means below,
No, I don't.
and the prefix hyper means above.
I didn't know.
Well, they do.
Hypo is below.
Yes.
Below hypo.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, we have talked about this CVJ junction between the head and the spine, haven't we?
Yeah.
All right. Now, if you have hypomobility between the skull and the spine, and you have hypermobility between the first vertebra and the second vertebra, you have a complexity of movement in those joints that's kind of like a corkscrew
I
that
guess.
irritates the spinal cord.
Yeah.
So, when you have generated a hypomobility of the occipital and atlantal articulations, they in turn, if they stay there, will generate a hypermobility of the articulations between the atlas and the axis and produce this occipital atlantal subluxation complex that produces all this nerve signal interference.
I don't know if I'll ever understand that.
Okay, now that tells you the whole story, and a doctor that's well versed in this terminology,
He knows.
he knows exactly what we're talking about, and you don't have to go through 16 pages of explanation to tell him.
But it just blows my mind,
Now,
you know.
the layman listening to that, it means nothing to him
That's
because
right.
you don't understand what we're talking about.
That's right.
But if I would sit down and explain to him word for word about this and demonstrate what I mean by these terms, he'd say, "Oh, yes, now I see."
Yeah. Well, that's what you did with me, for me, up there on the patio with your skull.
Yes.
I
So-
can understand that, but this other, it just makes me swim.
When I take x-rays of a patient and when they put their head forward like this, that's called flexion.
Yeah.
And if that head doesn't rock on that first vertebra, so that the x-rays will show that that gap is wider in the back than it was when it was upright, then we have hypoflexion.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the joint between the first vertebra and the second vertebra, where that process sticks up against the front, if that gap in there is too wide, we know this ligament has stretched out, and that produces a slack joint here, and you get hypermobility. You get too much motion.
Mm-hmm.
So you get too little motion up here, and you get too much motion down here. And it puts the spinal cord and all those nerves and blood vessels coming through there in a bind.
Which upsets the whole apple cart.
Which is an insult to those nerves, and the nerves can't send their signals through there like they're supposed to go, or that irritation will produce new nerve signals right at that spot that will confuse the brain about what to do about them.
Well, I'm glad you know about it, and I'm glad that you can, like your statements right here just kind of blow my mind, but I can, simpler language, like, you know, I understand.
Yeah, I'll say it like this. Too little motion between the head and the first vertebra causes too much motion between the first and second vertebra.
Okay.
And that raises hob with the spinal cord and interferes with the nerve signals.
Right.
And produces nerve signals that shouldn't be produced. And those signals are out of time with need. And the brain will tell the body to do things that's kind of crazy because it hasn't got the proper orders to work on.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
Now that's talking a Dutchman's language.
Yeah. Okay, now would you do something for me?
Yeah.
Would you take off your office garb and just sit with me in your shirt and let's talk about Grandma and Grandpa and different things here?
You've got to get rid of this jacket.
Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
sharing with me your great love, Daddy.
Okay.
You know, that's a great love of yours. Thank you for sharing with me your great love. You know.
Well, Bonnie, we've known each other for over 50 years, almost 50 years.
Why, my gosh, you were there when I was born, Daddy dear.
That's right.
Now, Daddy, how did the interest of chiropractic come into your life?
Well, my mother.
Oh, you told me this before, but go ahead and tell me again.
My mother has very severe headaches,
Yeah.
and it was a bilious type of headache. She would vomit and get cold and clammy, and she gets so sick she thought she's going to die, and she'd get on the phone and call us when we were in high school, and the principal would come get us, and we'd go home to take care of her.
Oh, I didn't know it was that bad. I knew it was bad.
And my father had her here, there. He'd had her to Battle Creek, Michigan, to the sanitarium. He had her to Mayer Brothers, and finally he took her to a local.
Mayo Brothers.
Yeah. Finally he took her to a local chiropractor, Dr. Solberg, in Mitchell, South Dakota. And you know, he did more for her headaches than all the doctors he had before. And he done so much for her that we all become chiropractic patients when we got sick, rather than medical doctor patients. And when Ruth got out of high school and wanted to be a nurse,
Oh, she first wanted to be a nurse?
yeah, well, he talked her out of being a nurse and told her to take up chiropractic and be a chiropractor.
Who, this Dr. Solberg did? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so he stayed there in Mitchell until he retired, and he later died, see? But Dr. Solberg was my first chiropractor, and he adjusted me when I was 14 years old. Ralph and I were butting heads like sheep, and he got my head over to one side and crammed me in there, and I couldn't get it up. I went around like this for days.
What do you mean you and Ralph were butting heads like sheep?
Just see who could...
Just horsing around,
just like those sheep was butting up there last night.
Okay, on the nature program.
Yeah. We were butting sheep like fools, you know, and he weighed more than I did, and brother, he got my neck out of whack.
So that's when you went to Dr. Solberg.
Yeah. And in about 3 weeks, he had me so that I could get my head up again straight. Well, I can fix it in a day, in one treatment now.
Yeah.
See? But, you know, we all thought he was pretty good. He finally got me out of it, see?
Yeah. And just look, if Dr. Solberg could see you now, Daddy, you know, listen.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Solberg and his wife called on me when I was needed.
They did?
They sure did.
When? What? How long to, like,
Well,
in what
you,
year?
You kids were around 8 or 9 years of age.
Oh, and he called on you? That's
Yes,
super.
sir. He visited me and Enid.
And he knew you were a chiropractor
Yes,
then.
oh yes, he visited me in Enid, Oklahoma. And, you know, great stuff, see?
Did he know that he was your inspiration?
Sure.
That's great.
Sure. My dad, Ruth and I were chiropractors. Then my dad took up chiropractic, and Ralph took up chiropractic. Well, sure, he was responsible for the whole Craton family being chiropractors. See?
Well, and it's great he knew it too. Well, and he came to see you.
So that's how I got introduced to chiropractic.
Yeah? You've told me that on the tape before. And
You see, my grandfather was a medical doctor.
Yeah? And there's somebody else in the family that is, Ted.
Well, Ted is my sister Ruth's boy.
Yeah.
And she just figured that medical doctors had an easier time of it than chiropractors, and so she'd get him to be a medical doctor, and he'd have an easier time, and he has.
He didn't have to buck opinion, did he, Daddy?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
The public accepted him, you know, as respectable, and honored him from the day he got out of school. Whereas we chiropractors were looked down at as quacks.
Yeah, and you had to go ahead with your splendid, well, I'm trying to think, mission to the public without the public's full respect, which is a sad story. Well, thank you for talking to me, and I want to say, though, that I don't think that it's fair that the chiropractors have been shoved off in the corner, but you have something for the chiropractor that is a better benefit than they've had.
The principle of chiropractic is right, and it's something the public will learn to use and enjoy and respect. But there's a lot of room in our profession for improvement.
And you're doing your part.
And I hope I'm doing my part.
You are. You certainly are.
On the film that I had just seen, Mom is saying to Grandpa, my grandpa, how much she feels like it's not fair that the chiropractors are shoved aside and all that. So I need to go on the record books here. That film was made in February 1985, and the chiropractors have had every opportunity since that time, and even before, to do the right thing by my grandfather, Dr. Earl Craton, of course. They have failed horrendously, absolutely horrendously have they failed him. In fact, he was heartbroken in that they didn't do it right, and they are still not teaching it right. So my mom, of course, has voiced her opinion, saying that it's not fair that chiropractors are shoved to the side. Well, that can be rewritten. It's not fair that the nerve signal interference specialist has been shoved aside. And it is the chiropractors that have shoved the nerve signal interference specialist aside. First, my grandfather, and now me. And it just needs to be on the record that Grandpa told the chiropractors for 40 to 50 years about their error. And they absolutely refused to believe the possibility that they were wrong, that Palmer was wrong. Well, he was wrong. As Grandpa always told me, he missed the mark. He aspired much, but he missed the mark. And so he had to do what he had to do. And what he had to do was turn his back on the chiropractors and create something different and new. And to the public right now, to trust a chiropractor to actually do his method, Craton's work, is ludicrous. To think they could actually accomplish what he did is insane. And because they have a license means nothing. They have a license to pop the vertebra in the spinal column is what they have a license to do. They don't have a license to position the head on top correctly, according to his methods, according to his vision, according to his insight, and according to his discovery. I, on the other hand, do have the legal right and the expertise, which is more important than anything else. I have worked on doctors, and yes, I'll go on the record. Dr. Smith, Dr. Tom Smith, local, Enid, Oklahoma. Dr. Frank Cam Schroeder, local, Enid, Oklahoma. Dr. Kent Bartell, Tulsa, Oklahoma, are the three men that I have worked on in the profession. Now, to say to me that I don't have the ability to perform Craton's work legally is insane. Because the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights protects me. And those are one of the freedoms that so many people are unaware of today, that need to be brought forward and fleshed out and brought up to the television station and the chiropractors and yes, the Board of Chiropractic Examiners and every other hospital and medical practitioner out there. You know, Craton was a genius, and he performed miracles, and he found discoveries that still are being suppressed. And so, for the record books, the chiropractors failed, the osteopaths have failed, the medical doctors have failed, and it's the nerve signal interference specialists, Grandpa, and now me, that have the right and the responsibility to do the work. And the public, I'm talking to you. So, and Mom, I do love you, but oh man, if you could only feel what it's like to be your daughter. So here's your opportunity to rise to the occasion. And public, it's your opportunity to rise to the occasion. Get a hold of your representative, get a hold of your doctor of all specialties, get a hold of your insurance company. Tell them, look, we want this. We need this to be investigated. We need this to be brought forward. We want our health. And we know that this is the field that will bring it forward. And if we don't know, we certainly want you to find out. And you have a responsibility to us, the consumer. And that is where the power is at. So, if you have any questions, of course, you can always get hold of me at the office. I do have the website. So, it's time for change, people. It's really time for a change. And the world can be a very wonderful place for anyone who is willing to, bite the bullet, I guess you could say, humble themselves long enough to find out their mistakes in order to be educated toward truth. And that goes to the ministers, too. So, hi, everybody. Had some controversy go on, and yeah, I'm going to tell it. There's a First Amendment, people. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of expression. And personally, I don't feel like I am vulgar, but I do know there's people out there that would like to say that I am, and probably maybe already have told you that's exactly the case. I don't know. But I do know this, is that there have been members of the ministry in the last week move to stop the show. I know that. And I have an idea who they are. I know that somebody called the station and tried to stop it. And of course, the freedom of speech is protected, and they couldn't get what they wanted. And so, as I had imagined, sure enough, and I will say my opinion about these people, what word do I use? Worms, the weak-willed souls of the world, went after Senator Milacek. And Wednesday, I get a message on my machine. And I think I'm just going to play it for you, just so you can feel the tension in his voice. And I have a hard time taking it seriously because of the First Amendment. And I honestly cannot believe that anyone would even think the way they're thinking in order to stop what I am trying to do. And what I am trying to do is to make this work affordable to the public of the city of Enid. That's what I'm trying to do. And so I'm going to play the tape for you of Milacek.
Miss Kennedy, this is Robert Milacek, and I would really appreciate if you did not show the video film that I'm on anymore. I don't really believe it does me justice, and so let's just not show it anymore, okay? Thanks.
Okay, he was stressed, obviously. And I can't figure why he would, I guess you could say he's feeling like he's endorsed it somehow, but just so the world knows, and the ministers and people of power and persuasion and eliteness, or whatever, quality it is that you hold, that you feel like you have a responsibility to influence the masses underneath you. For the record, Milacek has not endorsed this. He has simply investigated it. That's what he has done. And that's all that 4-minute segment of his presence on my initial program proves. That's all it proves. Is that it shows my effort of whom, the level of people I have spoken to. I've spoken to OU Health Sciences Center. I've spoken to Senator Milacek. I have spoken to the state representatives, Secretary of State. I have spoken to the Board of Chiropractic Examiners. I have spoken to the Osteopathic Board of Examiners. I have spoken to the AMA. I have spoken to every single chiropractor in this town. They're silent. I've spoken to a lot of ministers. And why have I spoken to the ministers? Because I hit the wall. Oh yes, there. I spoke to the assistant director of Bass Hospital. I have spoke to massage therapists, who I am getting more response and assistance from massage therapists than anybody else. Milacek's office has done relatively nothing to further the cause or to initiate the quest. He has simply made his presence known for a short period of time, and yes, I did ask him if he would allow for me to film him, and the camera was right there in his face, like the camera's in my face now. How could he not know that it was there? And a minister calls up and says, whatever he says, who knows? Who knows how many people he had, Who knows? I don't know. But whoever he is, and whoever you are out there, if you're watching, who feels like that minister might feel, may your conscience condemn you. May your conscience condemn you. What was I after? I was after affordable health care for the public of the city of Enid. Why? How was my plan? What was my hope 2 years ago when I approached many, many, many churches that I don't even know whose names they were? I know 2 were involved, and I know that the story's out there on the web. You can look it up. I know there were more ministers involved, and you'd be surprised at the views of these ministers of what they thought was the truth. regarding experiences I was going through. God was angry, and he punished some people in this area. And he's in the process of continuing the process. So, there you have it. You need to dig down and look inside your conscience, Mr. Minister. You need to find out what your soul's about. Because I tell you now, if you're opposing me, you're in the wrong. And this is why. My hope was, my prayer was, my plan was, is that all I needed was $1,000 a month. 10 churches, $100. That's what I needed. Figured those people actually put the money down. I don't need to be able to go out there, or to have to go out there and try so very hard in order to put food on the table. Right? Clothes on our backs and roof over the head. Right? That's what I need. Basics. It's what I had to have, as everybody else has to have. It's what I was after. And for that, this is what I was prepared to do. The cost of the work, the value of the work, minimum, absolute minimum, but this is not for a treatment. This is for the entire, from point A to point B. I don't care if it's one 30-second segment or, a year to keep it going. The value of the work is $5,000 because of what it will do. That's the value of the work. And I was planning to and willing to, and I'm still now prepared to cut the cost to $10 for a session. And that session is better than anything else you can get out there in any chiropractor's office, in any osteopath's office. If it has to do with the two joints that I've been taught, it's on top of the spine and the pelvis underneath. And that is so very, very, very common that you would be amazed to find out just how many people out there right now sitting there are in that state with a problem in those joints. I was willing to take $10 to fix your problem. If the churches would have only said, here Tammy, here's $100. 10 churches is all I needed. My overhead is covered. I don't need to worry about anything. I can focus on doing the work and I can help people. And that was my heart. That was my heart. And that is finally what I've had a chance to lay bare with these people recently. Now, I haven't called all the churches and I haven't contacted every single one of them, but I'll tell you now, if you're a member of a congregation or a minister of a congregation who has not heard from me, consider it. Because I know now that this work is what I tell you that it is. I know that it is. I have no doubts whatsoever. None. It is essentially Craton himself here now in a better position than he was when he was here in the 30s and the 50s. Because he left 57. 31 to 57 is when he was at the tower. And this is better than what he had back then. And I'd be happy to explain to you why. I already have tried. And people have tried to stop the show to the extent of having Malachik call and say, oh, well, let's not do that anymore. And for what reason? Because they are concerned that my freedom of speech is going to incriminate them because I'm going to mention a name. That's what they're saying. And I have the power to do so and the right to do so. So, anybody wants to know who they are, I suppose you can call the office, and I'll be very happy and pleased to tell the names. Very happy and pleased to tell the names. Meanwhile, anybody who's in a congregation who may not have heard of this, that feels like, and this is the reason why, I'll tell you honestly, well, why is the church involved? Why does the church have to have responsibility? Here's why. If a church is going to follow after Jesus, and I know that they profess that they do, then Jesus healed. And as a healer, he became known. And if the church is going to follow after Jesus Christ, and they're going to name him as Lord and Savior of their congregation and themselves, then they have a responsibility to know what Jesus did and how he lived and what his vision was for the world. And they are refusing that responsibility in the name of theology and beliefs, which is sad. It's sad. And so I laugh at those people. I laugh at those ministers. I taunt, I suppose you could say right now, because simply put, you know, if your conscience hasn't already condemned you, I don't know what else I can say that would make you open your eyes to see and your ears to hear. You need to go back and look at the Bible is all I can tell you. And I would stay out of the words of Paul right now if I were you. Because Jesus is my Lord and Master. And He is the one who guides me. And yes, I have seen His face in the clouds.
There is a way that leads to life. The key that find it never die. Past mountain peaks, grapes white with snow. The way grows brighter as they go. There is a road inside of you. Inside of me there is one too. No stumbling pilgrim in the dark. The road to Zion's in your heart. The road to Zion's in your heart. The river runs beside the road. It's what